Hello, I'm Vic Vogel, and the YouTube channel is Building Renaissance Leaders. That's where you'll find all of this information, and want to welcome you to Mastering the Art of Questioning. Today, we're going to talk about the last part of this series, which is miscellaneous considerations. And really, what that means is we're going to talk about some of the kinds of situations you might find yourself in where you're asking questions. Okay. Also, the importance of asking questions that put your other person you're discussing something with into a storytelling mode, which you're going to find out is a very beneficial tool sometimes. Also, there will be times where you need to bring your person back into focus and mind. So we're going to discuss mindfulness and the role it plays in asking questions and technology, the role that technology has played in the questioning world. And then finally, we're going to talk a little bit about ethics and morality. And that's an extremely important topic area when you talk about asking questions. And so, why don't we go ahead and get started? Imagine you were with someone who knows they need to make a change, and but they're kind of struggling to commit to that change. You might want to guide them to discover their own reasons for that change. And that's a very important tool we have when it comes to questioning. It can be used to be inspirational and motivational. So instead of telling that person, here's why you might want to do this, you might ask a question like, what are the benefits of making this change? These questions tend to help them explore their own values, their own motivations, their own rationale for whatever it is you're talking about. It's about creating a collaborative conversation, and it's a lot more interesting than engaging somebody and lecturing them about what you want them to know. So, uh, by asking open-ended questions, you can also ask scaling questions like on a range of 1 to 10, what do you feel about it? We can help them see the goals and strengths in their commitment to whatever we're talking about. Now, there's another aspect of questioning sometimes that proves to be very useful, and that's storytelling. Storytelling questions can reveal some actual hidden strengths and challenges that might otherwise be hidden. For example, you might ask a question like, tell me about a time when you overcame a challenge. So, what happens is you're going to get a story out of this person with that question. So, listening deeply to the narratives, we can help them kind of reframe their experiences and build a more empowering story or something that helps them understand a lot more about why they feel the way they do or what they need to do. For example, what is a story that reflects your values is a good one, or I mean, it kind of depends on whether you're in an interviewing question or you're just sitting over the table having coffee. Um, it, these kinds of, you have to select which questions work in the context, but if you can get this person to talk about something that is a story that something happened to them. As they tell you about it, they forget they're responding to a question. They get engulfed in the actual experience. And you learn things like you may learn they have more technical knowledge or they may have more uh, knowledge, experience in an area, or you may understand more about how they think or their logic about things that would have never come out in other questioning formats. So keep in mind If you can make this a discussion, if it's a discussion over coffee, that's a normal kind of thing. If you happen to be doing an interview, I always used to tell people when I was teaching them how to recruit and do interviewing for leadership and management placement, don't make this an interview. Make it a discussion. If you can get that storytelling coming out of this individual, you're going to learn so much more about them, how they feel about things, etc., than you would possibly learn just asking the question and writing down the response and moving on. And see, that's one of the problems with putting like 30 minutes on on an interview or some sort of time parameter on them. Now, there are going to be times, whether it's a long questioning or discussion or a long interview or whatever it is, where you're asking that a series of questions that becomes ongoing. And you're going to, at points and times, have to consider mindfulness with the subject. Mindfulness questions can be used to enhance self awareness, but they can also be used to bring people back into the moment. Asking the person to take a few minutes and breathe, have them focus on their breathing. Go get a cup of coffee. Say, hey, look, let's take a break. Let me get a cup of coffee. Can I get you some? Sometimes these breaks, these pauses, allow you to bring the person back into the moment, back into the focus. Because sometimes they'll get lost, sometimes they'll get confused and get lost in an interview. If you notice that, you know you're not going to get the best possible responses out of the person, whether you're trying to regulate their behavior or whether you're trying to gather information from them through your questioning process. If they get dysfunctional on you, if they get at odds with you in the process, you can take a break. You can have them take some breaths, say, hey, step back, let's take a minute for you to refocus here a little. Take a couple of deep breaths and relax and just concentrate on your breathing. Okay, now let's go. Or you can take a break. You can literally say, I need some coffee. Can I get you some coffee? Let's take a break for a moment. You can use these points. These are mindfulness points to cut their hesitation, their fear, their anxiety, their whatever they happen to lapse into. You can move them out of that environment quickly. And it's kind of up to you as the person who's guiding the questioning process to put this forth. Mindfulness is about being present in the moment and creating a space of reflection. For example, asking a critical question, uh, the person may take a few moments and a few breaths and then respond. You can also ask a question like, what are you noticing in your body right now? Or what thoughts are rising as we discuss this? There's all kinds of questions. You just have to find the right question for the context and the moment you're in. But the idea is to stop whatever the process was going through, allow them to refocus, come back into the moment, gather their thoughts, and move forward because you want to get the best possible response or the best possible change that you can get in the person. And you can't do that if they're moving off target, if they're moving off center from where you're trying to go. Let's talk about technology. Technology's enhanced our reach to meet so many, to reach so many other people in the world. It's a global capability you have. There's so many other people you can reach, so many other people. It's putting you in touch with people that you are not in your periphery on a normal day. That you have an opportunity to engage with people of different cultures, which is fascinating in my mind. In today's world, you can't overlook the impact technology has on questioning and feels like coaching and consulting and mentoring or interviewing if you're in HR, those areas. So, um, technology has a way. I mean, what we're doing now through this process is a technology issue. We can possibly reach more people, but there are so many other things you have to consider, like algorithms and things like that, that are important in the process too. Today, we have to assess things like interpersonal communication leadership assessments. That's an assessment I have of 80 responses to 11 different categories of communication. Leaders can assess themselves, they can assess their employees, they can use it as a 360-degree assessment where their boss assess them, their peers assess them, their employees assess them, and we take an average of all of that. There's a lot of things you can do with technology and assessments today that are very important to give you a lot of information. In fact, I never would used to ever go into a consulting contract without first doing an organizational and a communication assessment, a combination of those two things. I just wouldn't even engage in the contract until we had that information. I could sit down with whoever who I was talking to, whether it's a CEO or board member or an individual, and say, let's here's some information. Now we can go forward and talk about, well, whether you really need this, or if you do need it, to what extent you needed it, because we have a lot more information to make the decision on. So technology helps us do that today because you can literally put this out on the air, and you can collect information real quickly and real easily and anonymously in a lot of cases. So, supplementing the online assessments, a consultant or coach can validate the assessment data through a series of like face to face questions about assessments from a random population of the people you assess. That's definitely something I do every time I do an assessment. I'll run a computer based. Today is I just don't do paper and pencil anymore. I used to, but computer based assessments I do sometimes. And when I do those, I get all of that information collected. And before I go back and present it to the people I was collecting it for, I sit down with a sample of that population and ask some questions, and sometimes they're story questions, sometimes they're direct questions. Like three questions I asked almost consistently was, what, one thing do you like most about your leader? What thing do you like least about your leader? What one thing would you like your leader to do better? Those three questions are very powerful questions. They often associate and correlate. I can tell whether the responses from the instruments that I issue out to people correlate with the responses those people are telling me about their leaders. So, uh, the ability to use technology in questioning and assessments today, how we can issue them, all of that has improved so much. Uh, it's a far greater capability today than when I started doing this, say in 1980. So it's pretty phenomenal. I've seen this growth happen, and it's pretty phenomenal. Several social media platforms and some live streaming platforms actually have tools that allow the instructor, like if this were a webinar and I was conducting a course on this where you had a chat form going and I could see your chat form, or if we happen to have 10 other people in a panel and we were discussing this, and I wanted to know some thoughts about you, I could actually conduct a poll on some of these platforms, and everybody that's on the screen could stop a minute and take that poll. It still would be anonymous, but we would have like an aggregate. Say we had 10 people, we would have an average of the score of whatever I ask on that question. Sometimes that's very important to do while you're going through something online this, so you're getting a pretty good understanding of whether people are in fact grasping what you're trying to tell them. So that's a tool, that's a technology issue we didn't used to have. I mean, well, we had it in the form if it was in person to person because we could simply pass out a form and or have them write something on a piece of paper and then share it. But then that wouldn't be as anonymous as if you did it online. So you could use this in a person. Technology allows you to use the anonymity by having 10 people around the table with you and stop and have them all put something on a computer platform that provides you a poll that you can throw up on a screen and show what the responses were. And you have an anonymity around those 10 people who are sitting there with you. So there's a lot of tools. I mean, there's a lot of ways to make this work well for us. But on the other hand, we have things like social media today that really allow for misinformation on platforms. And I mean, they allow a lot of people to connect and share a lot of things, and that's a real benefit. But it's beginning to be filtering into it is more and more misinformation and disinformation, and sometimes downright propaganda. In addition, they design algorithms that can unduly influence whatever is being perceived on social media. So that's one of the disadvantages of technology. Something we need to learn to control for and allow regulation for by people who aren't associated with those platforms. They also can truncate things like posts, replies, and comments. I run into this all the time where somebody asks a question and it's a complicated deal. It's a complicated process or subject, and you only have so many characters you're allowed to put on to your reply or post, and you can't possibly cover that complex subject in those characters. So it becomes extremely difficult to continue on over through, reply after reply, reply, and you don't know. And being asynchronous, which means you don't, it's not immediate. We don't have a face-to-face situation where I can immediately see how you're responding. I may not know who's responding. Somebody may say something. There are several times people have put on a reply on a post, and I had to go back and look what I posted. It was that long ago. I don't know how they came upon it. So, at the time, it made a lot of sense to me, and I was doing it, and it was appropriate, and it was contextual. And, uh, you know, 2 months later, when somebody responds to it, I'm going, okay, hold on, let me go back and see what I said on this. And then I can reply back to them, maybe. So that's some of the dilemma you run into with technology too, that takes away from the human element. It restricts communication. In fact, unless if I did this, in many cases, if I was presenting something like this, or I was simply replying or posting, you would not have a visual of me and what I'm saying. So you don't know, you can't tell by any of my nonverbal communications how I feel about something or whether it's there. And so when employing and posting and commenting, most of the time we eliminate 80% of what most people create meaning from, which is the nonverbal communication that goes with this. So technology is there's some good to it, some bad to it. You really need to learn if you're going to be an effective communicator. You really need to learn how to master those elements of the communication process in a way where you can enhance it depending on the situation, the context. I mean, this is what we are living with today. Um, but it is not, back in 1970 or 80s, we didn't have this. I mean, most of the time you were either on the phone or you were going over and meeting with people in person. I mean, rather than holding something like this online, I was literally flying to Europe and spending a week in Europe meeting with those people face to face, which I'm not too sure wouldn't be still be a good idea in a lot of situations. But technology, on the other hand, has opened up a world to us of people and things that we can share. It all depends on how you use them and how effective you are as a communicator and using them. That's why I push interpersonal communication so much. You have to become proficient at it, and you have to know what I mean by interpersonal communication. We're not going to cover that here, but I'll show you a place you can find it at the end of the session. Uh, the last thing I want to cover is morality and ethics, or ethics and morality, probably. Um, Professions like coaching, consulting, and mentoring and therapy, when you're meeting with people, you're wielding a powerful tool when you have the ability to question. People assign that authority and that control over them to you when you're asking questions of them. They assume a certain thing about a consultant, or they assume a certain thing about a therapist that is more in line with an authority level than a collaborative level, and it's going to be up to you to break that through that and bring it back down to where we really want it, which is in that collaborative mode. People assign that authority really easily when you start questioning them. And in many cases, you have that legitimate authority to do that. And so that's why they're sensing that. So, first, it's essential to maintain confidentiality. You, um, Everything shared during questioning sessions like coaching or counseling or data collection should remain confidential unless you are legally obligated to disclose the information. You're not going to hear something and then put people together or put a group together and say, here's what John said to everybody. You do that, you're going to lose your trust and your credibility as a leader or as a someone who is has the capacity to help other people. You'll lose that helping syndrome real quick. It'll turn into fear and anxiety real quick. Second, we must be mindful of our own biases and assumptions. Our questions should be driven by a genuine interest and desire to help, not by some sort of agenda. Avoid leading questions that steer clients towards a predetermined outcome. For example, you may have asked somebody something, or you may ask a question like, or this might be a follow-up question or pen down question during the questioning process, but you may say something like, isn't this what you really meant to say? That's a leading question. Yeah, of course they're going to stop and say, oh my God, I shouldn't have said that. Maybe I should have said something else. What do you mean by that? And you get a whole lot of emotions going that you don't want in the middle of a collaborative discussion. Third, you want to consider the potential impact of your questions. Some questions can evoke really strong emotions or trigger trauma. It's vital to approach sensitive topics with empathy and respect, and you have to have the skill set to do these things. Don't go in and try these if you have not been educated, trained, or developed to handle these kinds of situations. They're highly explosive at times and can be really detrimental, not just from a legal perspective, but to the person who you're dealing with. If a client seems distressed, take a moment to go back to that point where we were talking about mindfulness. Take a moment out, pause, offer support, or do whatever is necessary to adjust the conversation and bring it back to the norm. Like I said, stop right there and say, hey, let's get a coffee. Yeah, I have been in situations where I've simply said, we've let's let's do this another time. Let's take, Take some time, go think about this a little bit more. Let's talk about it a little bit later. I know those three questions I told you about earlier. What do you like least? What do you like most? And what would you like your leader to do better? Those were questions I used during team building sessions too. I would give those to the team, and then I would have them put their stuff together with instructions that they had to agree. All of them had to agree on whatever one the answer was to those questions. They all had to agree 100%. Um, and and then they would have one person who they thought would be the best person to present that to the leader. I would go ask that leader the same question. What do you think your team is responding to when I ask them these questions? And that leader would write that down. And then I would bring them back together and have the team start out by presenting the responses to the first question. And I have been in situations where there were some pretty significant differences, and I could see right away we were going to get into a heated discussion. I literally stopped the team building session at that point and told the team, we're going to pick this up again tomorrow. We're going to meet and start over again tomorrow. And then I would take the leader and have a counseling session because the leader was getting uh, highly sensitive to what he was hearing, and he didn't like it, and he was about to launch into him, and I could tell that. So I had to stop that. So if you don't have that skill set, don't get into these kinds of environments. Get somebody who is skilled to handle those kinds of situations for you. Fourth, remember the purpose of asking questions is to empower the client or the person, not to exert control over them, for them to gain, for this to become collaborative and discussing, and people to discover things about their relationships, if it's more than one person like that team, or if you want this person to discover more about them, we're going to move into the storytelling mode and some other questioning formats. But we don't want them to feel like we're controlling this. This is something that we want them to feel like they're energized, they're motivated, they're inspired through their self discovery. That questions really should encourage that self discovery and autonomy. And you want to avoid questions that undermine that person or that client's confidence or create a sense of dependency on you. In other words, if you make them feel like they could never get to a solution on this through your questioning, that's going to be a dilemma because then they're going to be depending on you. And the first thing I'd get on any project scope I did as a consultant was how the end date, when I was going to be done and how I was going to be out so that they did not have to depend on me anymore. It was an exit plan. And I had some consultants that I used to contract with that would come in and try to work with me on a project that didn't want to present an exit plan because they wanted to try to do that. And they were using questions and stuff that were trying to exert the authority that would say, "You're really going to need me. You're going to need me for a long time." And I'm going, "No, I need an exit plan from you. I have an exit plan. You're going to have an exit plan." So, and the client's not going to be dependent. They're going to be capable when we're done with this. And that was a very important tool to present to people. And that's whether you're doing it as a client, a coach, a consultant, or a mentor, or whether you're just having a discussion with somebody else. There is a point where it's going to conclude. You want them feeling good at the end of this conclusion, feeling better about themselves and who they are. So, finally, always strive to act with integrity and authenticity. Be transparent about your intentions and approach. If you're unsure about a question, err on the side of caution. Don't ask the question. Ethical questions is about creating a space where people can feel safe. They can feel respected and empowered to explore their own potential and can provide you an honest and transparent responses. Don't use it to control people. Don't go that route. It's an uncomfortable for everybody, and it really doesn't work well. Okay, so that's all I really want to say to you on this last session. I hope this series is helpful for you. Mastering the art of questions really is a game changer for leaders. It allows you to build stronger relationships, navigate complex situations, and create more positive and productive work environment. You're going to be absolutely amazed once you become better at questioning how much more this is going to bring to you and your people. You're going to be able to find this again on Building Renaissance Leaders channel in YouTube. I want you to go subscribe, please, and hit that bell. On LinkedIn, I think I'm close to almost 1,000 followers now. If you're on LinkedIn and you're watching this, please go over and just subscribe and hit the notification bell. That goes a long ways to just helping put me into the algorithm in a way where more people can see this information. This information is free. It's not behind firewalls or subscriber programs. It is free for anybody to go get and use and be helpful anytime they might need it. You should be able to pull it up on your smartphone just before you go in a difficult discussion and review what you need to do before you do that. That should help you conduct that discussion better. That's the purpose of all of these podcasts I'm doing. So I hope this has been helpful for you. I hope you've enjoyed these podcasts. Um, if you have any questions, you certainly can go to where it says post there, and you can you can ask me in the comment section, or you can go to the posts right there. There's a community section. You can go in and ask questions, and we can even continue a dialogue or a thread on that in that area. You can also find out more about interpersonal communication and my interpersonal communication leadership course and my interpersonal communication leader assessment that's soon to be available. Uh, you can find out a lot more about that stuff, and you can even schedule an hour with me there in the calendar and events section. You can come in and schedule an hour where we can chat if you're interested in the course or if you're interested in anything that you think you might need a little help on or that you might want to continue to use my services to help you become a better communicator as a leader. You can find that on victorvogel.com. All right, until next time, you guys have a good day and make sure you subscribe because I don't necessarily schedule these podcasts. They don't happen every week at the same time. That's not my niche. That's podcasters' niche. I'm a consultant in leadership communication. So I don't always follow the rules that podcasters use. So if you're interested and these are helpful for you, that's fine. Please leave some comments, ask some questions, whatever. That's always enjoyable, and I can get back and help you with those. Until next time, take some time, start using some questions, start practicing. Practice, practice, practice. It's going to make you better. See you in the next podcast.